Hello everyone, it's Pastor Mark here at Brant Naz, the Brantford Church of the Nazarene in Brantford, Ontario. But actually today I'm in Jordan Harbour, Ontario, just off the Queenie. I apologize if the traffic noise behind in front of me is overbearing to us, but we'll just try and deal with it as it is. As you see behind me is a replica sailing ship from the 1500s. It's a replica of Le Grand Hermines, and I probably butchered how that says it, but it means the Great Weasel. It's a ship that Jacques Cartier sailed on in the 1500s, but it was rebuilt. Apparently this one was made in 1914, and it was used first on the St. Lawrence River as a ferry boat and then as a cargo ship after that. But it didn't appear again. It disappeared for a while and then appeared again at the World Exposition Expo 1967 in Montreal, where it was rebuilt as a floating restaurant there. It was taken from Montreal to Quebec City and stayed in a park there for some almost 30 years, where it began to deteriorate. And then in it was either the late 1990s or the early 2000s that a man here in the St. Catharines area, he bought the ship and he moved it here, and his plans was to turn it into a casino and a floating restaurant. But those plans never got off the ground, or should I say, they never got off the water when they were here. But anyway, the ship has been stayed here. You may have seen it yourself driving by the Queenie and wondered what that is. It's become known as the pirate ship or what else, as we see here, and as you can see, it, like us, is in deteriorating condition. We have something in common with this boat, is that we are in deteriorating condition. And that leads me to today's question that was forwarded to me. Actually, it was forwarded to me by someone who knows of the health journey that I've walked through in the past 6 or so years. So he forwarded this question. He says, I prayed for a friend to be healed, but he wasn't healed. How come? I prayed for a friend to be healed, but he wasn't healed. How come? Well, that's a really important question. And I would say to us, first of all, that is so important that what we should avoid doing is taking some trite answer, some easy answer, and just to give it a very simple answer. There needs to be more to it than that. So to give it a simple answer, well, it must be God's will. Or we could look at it and say God must be teaching you something, or God has something great in store for you. Or maybe even worse, the worst thing that could be say to somebody, well, maybe there's some unconfessed sin in your life, so that's why you haven't been healed of this disease or something like that, for someone who's got either a terminal or a chronic disease or sickness. So we want to make sure that we don't give this a trite answer. But back to our question, I prayed for someone to be healed, why weren't they healed? There's a reason. The person in part gave this question to me because as I said, they've known my journey. And my health journey started about 6 years ago when I began to experience some digestive and some anxiety problems. And I put the digestive problems down to some diet and some anxiety as a result of that. And I began to get treated for it. Then about 4 years ago, or probably just over 4 years ago, I began to have some equilibrium problems. And that continued till the shorter ending to a much longer story is about 2.5, 3 years ago, I was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. Now, to complicate that even further, about 9 months to a year ago, I was diagnosed with another disease called ataxia. It's the word taxi with an A in front and an A in the back. And basically it means loss of control or loss of coordination. It's like both what ataxia and Parkinson's have in common is that neither are curable, but Parkinson's can be treated, the symptoms can be treated to help either lessen them, or some even feel that maybe some of the treatments can be used to help retard its growth and progress with you. But unlike that with ataxia, the same way as ataxia, there's no known cure, but as well, there's no known treatment for the symptoms. It's felt that ataxia is caused by either another sickness or disease or medications or whatever. My specialist feels it's been caused because of the Parkinson's. So I speak to you this morning, not for sympathy, not for feeling sorry for me, but I speak to you this morning or today to say I speak from a place of experience. When I speak about when someone asks, I prayed for someone to be healed, why weren't they healed? I speak from a place of experience. And like I said, the last thing we need is for someone to come with a trite or a simple answer for us. We need something much, much broader than that when we look at this perspective. One of the things I would say to us is is that for an answer, there can be many reasons why God would allow sickness or disease to come upon us. Maybe it's to try and give us some guidance. Maybe it's to try and direct us in a certain way. Maybe it's so that he, as Paul said, the Apostle Paul said, he had a thorn in his flesh, whatever that thorn was. And scholars have speculated for ages what that thorn was. But he said that I prayed 3 times that the Lord would take it away, and he didn't take it away. And God finally responded to him. He says, you know, my strength is made perfect in your weakness. So maybe God is trying to show us that it's his strength that he wants to show through us. There can be all sorts of reasons that we see there. When Paul was on the road to Damascus to persecute Christians and jail Christians, the Lord let blindness come upon him so that he could get his attention and directed him to the city of Damascus. Maybe the Lord is giving us that direction. There can be all sorts of reasons why, but it can prompt the questions, well, if he's such a loving God, if he's such a wholesome God, how come he allows these things to happen? And you know what? The bottom line to that would be, I can't say for sure why he allows these things to happen. I can't say why he allows suffering to happen. Why is it that an older person lays in a nursing home wanting to die, and yet a younger person gets a disease and wants to live but ends up dying, but the older person doesn't die? Why is it that an elderly woman in her 90s has faith in Jesus and is willing to meet him and desires to meet him, yet can't will herself to death, but yet a 20-year-old girl is killed in a car accident? Why is it that a couple who desired a baby for so long, when that baby is born, it's stillborn, or it's either born with a disability or something? Why does that happen? Maybe taking a bit of a different slant, not thinking of our health. Why is it that we have garbage cans that are overflowing, but yet some people in this world are starving? Why is it all those things? We could ask why forever. And some of it can be the Lord trying to direct in there. But I think rather than ask why, it could be, what should we do about this? Well, if we're a person who does have a terminal or chronic illness or disease, we can wonder these things, and others can wonder these things. So I want to talk to us about that from 2 perspectives. The first perspective I want to talk to us about that is, how do we respond to someone who's asking us about these things, who has a chronic illness or who has a terminal illness? How do we respond to them? First thing I would say to them is, we need to try and understand them, not try and answer them. A little while ago, I read something that said, we in the Western world in particular, when we hear a question, we listen with the intent of trying to formulate an answer. We're listening to try and come up with an answer. But in many other places of the world, they listen to try and understand. The Bible tells us that we are to mourn with those who mourn, rejoice with those who rejoice, that we are to come alongside each other and bear one another's burdens. All of those things. Mourn with those who mourn, bear with one another's burdens, rejoice with those who rejoice. That tells me of relationship. So rather than, if someone comes to us, even if it's with a question or questions about their health and why doesn't God heal me, I would say, rather than try and figure out an answer, what we should do is work on our relationship with them. Come alongside them, comfort them, care for them, be with them, show them compassion, show them empathy, and do things like that. Well, the other aspect would be, how do we as people who have a terminal illness or a chronic illness, how do we respond to that? How can we respond? Well, first, I want us to look at it from 2 ways. First, I want us to look at our perspective. What's our perspective of that? We need to remember that it's the psalmist said, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. Why does the psalmist fear no evil? Because you are with me. Your rod and your staff, you comfort me. So if we've got a terminal illness or a chronic illness, we need to remember that even though we're going through that, God is with us. The other thing I want us to remember is that God is not in the business, I can say, of punishing us right now. I believe wholeheartedly that since Jesus has come, Jesus says he has came to seek and save the lost. He came to seek and save the lost. He says, the thief has come to steal and destroy, but I have come that you might have life and have it to the full. I believe that there's going to be a judgment upon us if we haven't come to faith in Jesus Christ and trusted in Jesus Christ to bring us to a restored relationship with God. I believe that final judgment, that final punishment, if we can call it that, God will look after that at the time of the final judgment. right now he's not inflicting us, but he allows us to go through these things. So why does he allow us to go through these things as we look at it? Well, we see as a part of it, as I just mentioned there, maybe he is guiding us, maybe he is directing us, maybe he is wanting to show his strength. But we need to remember that these things are not from him. So the perspective I try to keep is that perspective that I have of this is not from God. Sometimes I've heard people with, say, cancer, or maybe it's Parkinson's disease, they said, you know, my Parkinson's or my cancer, I do not claim for myself anything that is not of God. I don't believe that God brought me through this, brought this to me, but I believe he's allowing me to go through it. And as Psalm 23 said, he comforts me. He is with me along that journey as I take it. So we need to remember, as part of that perspective, that this is not of God. Don't claim it for yourself. Keep that perspective that he is with us. He is with us. And we also need to keep that perspective that I don't suffer from Parkinson's, or I don't suffer from a disease, or I don't suffer from a terminal illness. I live with it. I don't suffer with it. I live with it. Jesus said, I have come that you might have life and have it to the full. So let's remember that when we're as those people. We also need to remember that as we respond, we need to respond in thankfulness. James said, in all circumstances, give thanks. In all circumstances, give thanks to the Lord. Notice that it doesn't say there, in all circumstances, be thankful. It says in all circumstances, or be thankful for all circumstances, but in all circumstances, be thankful with that. So I would encourage us to have that perspective of we need to have Thanksgiving. Well, how can we have Thanksgiving if we have a terminal illness or if we have a chronic illness? How can we have Thanksgiving? I would suggest to us in two ways. First of all, we can be thankful that God is with us. We can also be thankful that his strength is shown in our weaknesses. We don't have the ability and we're weak in these times. His strength will be shown with us. But I'm also thankful for the provision that's given to me, and we should be thankful for the provision that's given to you. Not just in the help that I get from friends and loved ones that are close to me, but also helpful, I would say, in the tools that I have. Canes and walkers and handrails to help me get in and out of the tub and things like that. Even an electric toothbrush to help me. It helps me in my weakness. And I can look and say, I've been reduced to this, to using these things. But instead we can have that thankful attitude of not I've been reduced to this, but we can have that attitude of I've been given this. I've been, every good and perfect gift is from God, is what the Bible tells us. We can have the attitude that I've been provided with this, to, even though my quality of life isn't what it used to be, it gives me the best quality of life I can have right now, so we can be thankful for it. So let's keep that in mind as we spend. I prayed to be healed and I wasn't healed, or I prayed for someone to be healed and they weren't healed. However we look at it, why not? As we look at that, we can turn around and we can say from this, we need to remember as we respond to people like that, and as we respond to the situations we're in ourselves, to do that. Just before I close today, I'd like to close this in prayer, because I'd like to pray for any of you who might be there today who have a terminal illness or a chronic illness. Father, we could try and figure out why. We can try and figure out what's next. We could try and figure out, I just don't understand this, what's going on. But Father, you called us to trust in you. Thank you that you are with us, that you guide us, you protect us. That, Father, your strength is shown perfect in our weakness. Thank you for the provisions that you give to us, that aid us and help us. Thank you, Father, for your Son, Jesus Christ, who came that we might have life and have it to the full. And whether that life is with the same things that we used to be able to do or not with the same things we used to be able to do, help us to live our life to the fullest right now. Amen. Well, thank you so much for joining me today here on Take a Break. And I would encourage you that if I'm on every week, we're answering your questions or comments on Christian faith or the Bible. And if you have more with this, I would encourage you to either email me at brantnazmark@gmail.com, brantnazmark@gmail.com, or you can send me a private message if your questions of the Christian faith or the Bible. And as you do that, each Wednesday I take a break sometime during the day to answer those. As well, I would invite you to either join us in person at 347 Fairview Drive in Brantford, Ontario, or here on Facebook Live on Sunday mornings at 10:30 for our services. We'd love to have you join with us. Take care, and may the Lord keep you this week.